graders. We talked yesterday about following rules with input and output charts. And today we are going to continue to talk about rules, but we're going to get a little bit more complicated. And we're going to talk about how do we solve a rule if we don't necessarily know the input, but we do know the output. So we are going to be what we're going to be doing today. Our focus is kind of working backwards. So you'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. So our math focus is I can describe and apply single operation input-output rules involving addition and subtraction to solve problems. So yesterday we looked at an input and output chart, and when we looked at the input and output chart, it all looked that, and the input was all filled in on one side, and we knew our rule, and all we had to do was apply the rule to find the output. Today is going to look a little bit different. Today, one, we're working with a little bit bigger numbers, and two, you'll notice that on the input side, it's not entirely filled in, and neither is the output side. So our job is going to be able to figure out how are we going to apply the rule to find the input side and the output side. So let's do it together. So the first thing we do as we look at this is we look at the rule and recognize the rule, which is we add 13 to the input to get the output. Okay, so let's look at the first one, because there's always, in your input-output chart, there's always going to be one number that's completely done. So right here, I'm saying 2 to 15. So if I have 2, I need to add 13, and that would give me my output as 15, okay? So next, I'm looking here, and I'm saying, oh, I have an output, but I don't have an input. I'll come back to that in just a second. Here I know I have an input, which is 15, but it just wants me to apply the rule and find the output. So I'm going to do that right now. What's 15 plus 13? 5 plus 3 is 8. 1 plus 1 is 2. So I'm going to know that my output is going to be 28. Okay, so I knew I could fill that in. Now this one, I'm a little confused because there's no input, but there is an output, so I'll come back to that in a second. So right here, I have an input and no output, so I can follow this rule again. So I have 80, and my rule is add 13, so I'm going to say 80 plus 13, and that gives me 0 plus 3 is 3, 8 plus 1 is 9. So I know that my output is going to be 93 because I just applied that rule. Oh, maybe if you can't see my scribbles over here, we can do that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use this to find the input numbers. Now, we've talked a lot recently about how multiplication and division are the opposites of one another, but let's remember back to first and second grade when we talked about how addition and subtraction are the opposites of one another. So if we want to work backwards and find the input instead of the output, we have to find the opposite of our rule. And our rule right here is, remember, plus 13. So instead of doing that, if we want to go from the output to the input, the opposite direction, we're going to do the opposite of the rule, which is subtract 13. So I have 26 right here, and I want to find out what the input is. So I have to kind of think backwards. I have to say to myself, you know what? No, I have to apply the opposite of the rule. So instead of plus 13, I'm going to do minus 13 to find the rule. I can't do 6 minus 3, so I'm going to regroup here. 16. Oh, sorry, I can do 6 minus 3. It's a little early in the morning for me. I don't typically do videos early in the morning. 6 minus 3 is 3. 2 minus 1 is 1. So my answer is 13. So that means my input would be 13, my output would be 26. Let's see if that makes sense. If I follow the rule, I have 13 and I add 13, so 13 plus 13, 3 plus 3 is 6, 1 plus 1 is 2. Does that give me 26? Yes. So I kind of rechecked by adding that rule, and it worked out great. I had it correct. So let's do the same thing over here with a bigger number. So I have 88 here in my output. So I know that in order to work backwards, I have to find the opposite of the rule, which is add 13. So I have to do 88 minus 13. So I have 88 minus 13. So 8 subtract 3 is 5. 8 minus 1 is 7. So it should be 75. Now let's double check and make sure that I have it right. So I have 75. Like I said, it's a little early for me. 75 plus 13. 5 plus 3 is 8. 7 plus 1 is 8. Yes, that does give me 88. So you need to remember that when you're working with these input-output charts, if they want you to find the input, if they want you to work backward, you have to find the opposite of the rule. So good luck today, third graders.